I'm guessing you're wondering if you have an enforceable contract and need to know what makes an enforceable contract. We're going to cover the elements. I'm going to summarize, about a year's worth of a course in contract law. And then if you stick around, I'm going to give you tips to make sure that all of your contracts are enforceable and that you understand everything about whether it's written, oral, those sort of things. So let's get started. It's kind of my own version of the elements of a contract. You'll see them anywhere from 3 to 6 elements that if you check off, you have a contract. Now this applies to whether something's in writing, signed by both parties, or just your old-fashioned handshake deal. If you have these elements, then you have an enforceable contract. The first element is an offer. I am offering to sell you my car for $10,000. The second element is an acceptance, accepting the offer. The third element is called consideration. In the legal world, this means each party is getting something. So you have accepted my offer. You are giving me $10,000. That's what I'm getting. You are getting the car. You cannot have an enforceable contract without consideration. It gels this whole thing together. So I'll give you an example in the business world. Non-competes. A lot of times business owners will say, hey, I need non-competes, and they'll slap them in front of all their employees. And they'll say, sign this, sign this, sign this. So they sign that agreement. Well, the employee didn't get anything out of it. So it's not enforceable under just basic contract law. There was no consideration. So if an employer says, hey, we're adding this non-compete and you're getting a $10,000 raise, then it is enforceable because you're getting something. So every contract has to be getting something in return. So that's what you have. You have offer, acceptance, and consideration. Now there's other things that kind of hover around this that people make elements as it's got to be something legal. You can't enforce an illegal transaction under contract law. There's this term called the meeting of the minds, and it's just making sure that the two parties have agreed on the same deal. If there's been some trickery, bait and switch, misunderstanding, that sort of thing. So these kind of elements hover around a little bit. Another thing is, we talk about legality, meeting of minds, and then also capacity. So an 8-year-old can't enter into a contract. Can someone who's intoxicated enter into a contract? Kind of depends on the circumstances, but you have to have the capacity to enter that agreement. But what you want to spend your time focusing on is that offer. Was there an offer made? Was it accepted? And was there consideration? And then you can kind of look into these other tangential things. But in terms of enforcing your contracts, if you have these deals in place, you can then go enforce them. All right, now let's talk about just the practicality of whatever contract deal you're in, whether you want to enforce it or get out of it. Oral contracts, verbal, on the phone, in person, handshake, those are enforceable. Here's the problem, proving it. So I'm going to say one thing about our deal and you're going to say something else. A lot of our clients are a law firm. I swear both parties would pass lie detector tests on each 90% of the time. They just think they agreed on something different, or there was some term that they thought was going to happen, but it wasn't agreed upon, discussed, or even thought about. This is why having lawyers draft contracts is helpful. It just helps look around the corners, the pitfalls, things that you might not think become problems because, well, we see them become problems. So that's why contracts are helpful, is clarity. And then it kind of pushes around the corners a little bit. So the reality is, let's say that someone owes you $10,000 on a contract, and it's a he said, she said. Well, you don't really know if you're going to win. Is the judge going to buy your story or their story? You can go watch Judge Judy for 10 minutes, and you'll see you show up with a contract that's signed, you walk in, say, here you go, don't have the check for it, you're going to win every single time. It's just the way it is. So you have to be able to point to something on why your side is right. So that contract prevents the problem because you can on the front end say, look, here's what you agreed to. And then you have recourse if they don't agree to it. We've got a link below from Drafted Legal's contracts, which are just, they're written by lawyers. They're pre-packaged for you. So they do see around the corners and do a good job of trying to discuss and prevent what might later become a problem. Anytime you're negotiating a contract or working with someone, you want it to be someone that you trust on a handshake, but then put it in writing. They say trust but verify. If it's someone that you think is squirrely, trust your intuition, because No matter how good your contract is, they can still make it difficult by not complying. You want someone who understands the deal you're entering and is someone you're aligned with. Now that doesn't always happen. If you're selling a product, it's a little easier, but if you're especially doing some service-based ongoing relationship, you really want to feel comfortable and with that person you're entering the agreement with, like you can trust them. And you do want to discuss as much of this deal as possible. You don't want to have something in the back of your head that you assume and it never gets discussed and then there's a misunderstanding. So as much as you can flesh out on the front end, the better, because what happens is we have text messages, emails, phone calls, and there's genuine misunderstanding about the expectations on time and deliverables and the scope. They call it scope creep. The scope of the project just expands and expands. So use a well-written agreement. Again, Drafted Legal has great ones that'll kind of walk you through what you need to be talking about. And then to summarize, so a contract, offer, acceptance, consideration. Get it signed and you'll be on your way. Good luck.